So we are doing the chapter The Invention of Vita-Wonk, right? So Vita-Wonk was a medicine invented by an inventor, Mr. Willy Wonka, right? And this was a medicine which makes people younger, okay? So younger that some people get minus 87. And what happens in the story? Let's see. Before proceeding, first let's read the introduction. Who are the oldest people you know? What are the oldest things you have in your house, in your city, town, or village? How old are they? Have you ever wished that you were older? Have you wished that you could grow up in a hurry? Now let's read the story. Mr. Willy Wonka begins by inventing Wonka wheat, which makes people younger. But Wonka wheat is too strong. Some people some people disappear because the age becomes minus. One person actually becomes minus 87, which means he has to got to wait 87 years before he can come back. Mr. Willy Wonka must invent a new thing. Now let's read the scene one, right? So Mr. Wonka said, so once again I rolled up my sleeves and set to work. Set to work means let's begin the work. Once again I squeezed my brain, searching for the new recipe. What is the recipe? Instructions for making something, right? Like your mother cooks a food, a recipe, so it's a recipe, right? She wants a recipe to cook something, right? How to make it, what all ingredients will be needed, that kind of thing. So searching for the new recipe, I had to create age to make people old. Older, oldest, ha ha, I cried, for now the ideas were beginning to come. What is the oldest living thing in the world? What lives longer than anything else? A tree, Charlie said. Right you are, Charlie. But what kind of a tree? Not the Douglas fir. Fir is what? A tree with needle-like leaves and cones. And this is mainly found in the snowy regions and the mountainous regions, right? Then he said, not the oak. Oak is a family of large trees with hardwood. The chinar in Kashmir is a kind of oak tree. Not the cedar. Cedar is an evergreen tree. Evergreen means which remains green throughout the year, with hard, red, sweet smelling wood used for making boxes, pencils, fences, and etc. Right? Then he said, no, no, my boy. It is a tree called the bristlecone pine that grows upon the slopes of Wheeler Peak in Nevada, USA. You can find bristlecone pines on Wheeler Park today that are over 4,000 years old. This is a fact, Charlie. Ask any dendrochronologist you like and look that word up in the dictionary when you get home, will you please? So, who is a dendrochronologist? Is a person who studies the age of the tree by looking at the rings of the tree so he can guess the age of the tree, right? So that started me off. I jumped into the great glass elevator and rushed all over the world collecting special items from the oldest living things. So what all he collected? Let's read. A pint of sap from a 4,000-year-old bristlecone pine. Then the toenail clippings from a 168-year-old Russian farmer called Petrovich Gregorovich. Okay. Then an egg laid by a 200-year-old tortoise belonging to the king of Tonga. The tail of a 51-year-old horse in Arabia. The whiskers of a 36-year-old cat called Crumpets. An old flea which had lived on crumpets for 36 years. What is a flea? Flea is a small insect living on the skin of animals for their blood. Right? That is a very dangerous animal, a very dangerous insect. The tail of a 207-year-old giant rat from Tibet. The black teeth of a 97-year-old grimalkin living in a cave on Mount Popocatépetl. Okay? The knuckle bones of a 700-year-old cataloo from Peru. So all this he collected for his invention. Before proceeding, let's do this comprehension check. Choose the right answer. So Mr. Willy Wonka is a cook, an inventor, or a manager. So option B is correct. He was an inventor. Then 2. Wonka wheat makes people older or younger. So the right answer is option B, younger. Then 3rd, Mr. Wonka want to invent a new thing which will make people younger or older. So he wants to invent a new thing which will make people older. Now the next question. Can anyone's age be a minus number? What does minus 87 means? See, it's not possible. This is impossible. Someone's age can't be minus number. It is calculated from the day we are born. And minus 87 means you will still have to wait 87 years to take birth, right? So that is not possible. Then Mr. Wonka begins by asking himself two questions. What were they? First question was, what is the oldest thing living in the world? The next question was, what lives longer than anything else, right? Now let's read scene 2. All over the world, Charlie, Mr. Wonka went on. I tracked down very old and ancient animals and took an important little bit of something from each one of them. A hair or an eyebrow, or sometimes it was no more than an ounce or two of the jam scraped from between its toes while it was sleeping, right? So I tracked down means I searched. Okay, I searched for it, right? So what he did, what he tracked, let's repeat. So Mr. Wonka went on, I tracked down very old and ancient animals and took an important little bit of something from each one of them. A hair or an eyebrow, or sometimes it was no more than an ounce or two of the jam scraped from between its toes while it was sleeping. I tracked down the whistle pig, the bobolink, the scroc, the polyfrog, the giant curlic, the stinging slug, and the venomous squirrel who can spit poison right into your eye from 50 yards away. Okay? But there is no one to tell you about them all now. Charlie, let me just say quickly that in the end, after lots of boiling and bubbling and mixing and testing in my inventing room, I produced one tiny cupful of oily black liquid and gave 4 drops of it to a brave 20-year-old Oompa Loompa volunteer to see what happened. So, volunteer is a person who comes, like you can experiment on that person, right? So, the name of that person was Oompa Loompa. Now, what did happen? Charlie asked. It was fantastic, cried Mr. Wonka. The moment he swallowed it, he began wrinkling and shriveling up all over, and his hair started dropping off, and his teeth started falling out, and, before I knew it, he had suddenly become an old fellow of 75. And thus, my dear Charlie, was Vita-Wonk invented. So, this was written by Roald Dahl from Charlie and the Great Grass Elevator, right? Now let's discuss these question answers. What trees does Mr. Wonka mention? Which tree does he say lives the longest? So the trees he mentioned were the Douglas fir, oak, cedar, and the tree which lives the longest was the bristle pine cone, which you can find in Wheeler Peak in Nevada, USA, right? Then how long does this tree live? Where can you find it? So this tree had lived for over 4,000 years, and bristlecone pine was found in the slopes of Wheeler Peak in Nevada, USA, right? Then question 2. How many of the oldest living things can you remember from Mr. Wonka's list? Don't look back at the story. Do you think all these things really exist, or are some of them purely imaginary? I think many of them are purely imaginary. So let's recall. First, we read about 4,000-year-old bristlecone pine tree, right? Then we read about a 168-year-old Russian farmer. Then we read about 200-year-old tortoise. Then 51-year-old horse. Then 36-year-old cat. 207-year-old giant rat. Then 97-year-old grimalkin. Remember? 36-year-old flea. So all these are, I don't think all of them exist. They are purely imaginary because for these many years, these things, these insects, these reptiles, they can't exist. Okay, so they don't have that much of age, right? Now, question 3. Why does Mr. Wonka collect items from the oldest thing? Do you think that is his right way to begin his invention? So, Mr. Wonka collects items from the oldest things because he had to invent an item that can make people older. He has to make something unique, right? So, he has collected so many things from the past, so many unusual things, right? And I think researching the oldest thing is still a good idea as it can give him an insight into what might be the reason behind their long life. Okay? But collecting little things from such features is not a great idea to begin his invention, according to me. Then, what happens to the volunteer who swallows 4 drops of the new invention? What is the name of the invention? So, the volunteer, remember, Oompa Loompa, 20-year-old? He began to wrinkle and shrivel up all over. His hair started to drip off and his teeth started to fall out. And what was the name of the invention? The name of the invention was Vita Wonk, right? So here we come to the end of this story with the question answers. And if you want, you can do this as well. Working with language, what do you call these insects in your language that you can search for and complete this, right? Here we come to the end of this chapter. Thank you.